Well, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Real Reds Talk, an authentic football fan channel dedicated to Manchester United. As you can see, alongside us today, we have another special guest on the channel, and this time it's a football finance expert, Mr. Kieran Maguire. How are you, sir?
I'm all good, lads. All good. Cricket season here, but football finance never stops, and the transfer window never stops. So, 365 days a year, isn't it, for us all?
Yeah, it certainly feels like that. And we're going to dive into many things, takeover, football transfers, the whole kind of jazz. But yeah, Sam?
Yeah, just wanted to say thanks for coming on. Like, I'm a listener of the podcast. I've got your book as well. It's a bit hard at reading for me because I'm not great with numbers and stuff, but the rest of the stuff I can get my head around, even for like a layman. So yeah, appreciate it coming on. But just before we go on to like all the Manchester United saga and the money and all that sort of stuff, I know you're a big you're basically a transplanted Mancunian almost, aren't you? You spent a lot of time in Manchester. You're a lecturer here. You're a big fan of the music. You're a big fan of the sort of a lot of the bands that have come out of here. Before we get on to the important stuff, I just wanted to ask you, what were 3 songs you would put on a Spotify playlist to define Manchester and the music scene?
I Want to Be Adored by the Stone Roses.
Nice.
Okay.
Heaven Knows I'm Miserable Now by the Smiths. And Creep by The Fall.
Love that.
Perfect.
3 solid options there.
Like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
3 absolutely solid options. Love them options. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you as well, what kind of piqued your interest in the world of finance and football if we take it kind of way back? We're talking about days in Manchester and stuff like that, so I thought we could start there and then move into it.
Well, I started teaching in 1989, and I spent quite a lot of time at MMU. And the trouble is, if you're trying to get kids interested at the age of 19 and 20 into finance, it's actually quite difficult, especially if you've got a Monday morning lecture for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I've always used football historically as a way, instead of saying, let's take a look at Apple, let's take a look at Mercedes-Benz, let's take a look at British Airways, let's take a look at United, let's go look at City. If you can see the numbers and you see that, halfway, by the time Mourinho had been at United for a year, United owed 300 million quid in outstanding transfer fees to other clubs. That's why they didn't sign anybody in that window. It all comes down to money. And then I guess I was unlucky or lucky. I also teach at Canary Wharf and Wall Street and places like that. And I was teaching one day for a bank, which I'd rather not name. And all of a sudden, the shutters on the windows go across, and these 4 fucking huge bouncers turn up on the front door. And I go, what's going on here, boys? You're trying to stop people from getting out of my class. I just thought that. And they said, well, actually, one of our clients is called the Glazer family. I'd never heard of one in my life. And we're about to announce that they've just bought Manchester United. And we fear a bunch of Cockney Reds are going to storm the building and put through the windows and kick off. So I'm sort of on the way home. I'm living in Manchester, so I go from Canary Wharf, get the train, get a phone call from the uni to say BBC are looking for somebody to explain what a leverage buyout is. We know that you talk nothing but football and music in class. Could you go onto the BBC sofa tomorrow morning and do it? So I did it, and I didn't make a fool of myself. So the next time a football finance story comes in, you're on somebody's list. You get a call again. And it's just sort of snowballed from there. And Liverpool Uni headhunted me to teach specific football finance courses. So I jumped at that, and it's just sort of exploded. It's a bit like, you got a couple of kits behind you. When a kit was announced, it was, a kit's been announced. Now it's a big event. Now finances in football, because of FFP, because of Super League, because of clubs' unusual way of accounting for things which can lead to charges, it becomes big news. And I've sort of become a big fish in a very small pond.
Yeah, love that.
Like it. Yeah, they're speaking of Manchester. I said to you in the Twitter DMs, you taught my girlfriend at Manchester Uni. She did accounting, finance, and I think you were a lecturer. And she said, yeah, really enjoyed your lectures and stuff like that. So when you popped up on Paddock one day, She was like, "That's my uni lecturer." I was like, "What?" And she went, "He taught me at uni." I was like, "Are you sure?" He's like football finance guy. He was like, "No, he did like finance accounting." And I was like Googling stuff, and she went, "No, that's him." I was just like, "Oh, small world."
Small world.
Really small. We'll move on to takeover, anyways. I don't know about you, Kieran, but I'm tired. I'm fed up with the whole takeover saga, as I'm sure many Reds are. In terms of the road to new owners, like, where are we with the Glazers? Are they just going to continue digging in their heels till we come up with a magical sort of 6 billion? Or are we in the sort of end game now and it's just a sort of matter of time before Qatar's handed the keys? And just like a little side question on that. When they did sort of announce they were exploring, is it strategic alternatives? Was that the phrase? Yeah. Could this deal have been done quicker, or was it always going to be dragged out because of who the Glazers are?
The Glazers don't have to sell Manchester United. So therefore, it's a bit like if you put your house up for sale, nobody matches the asking price, and you're not in a hurry to go anywhere else. You'll sit around. I think they've not helped the club, but they've never helped the club since arriving in 2005. Their focus has always been on what is best for the Glazer family. They genuinely believe that they can get 5.5, 6 billion for it, and if they do, sort of, part of me admires them for it, because nobody ever thought it was truly worth that in terms of any of the ways that you would normally go about valuing a business. But they've dug their heels in. They've used Chelsea as Chelsea is worth 2.5, and at the time the club was had all of its assets seized. Abramovich was effectively done a runner. Manchester United's in good health, so Manchester United must be worth a lot more. Could the deal have been done faster? Yes, absolutely. What I think they're doing now, and Sir Alex always used to say that dealing with Daniel Levy was more painful than having his hip replaced, because just when you thought you got the deal over the line, there's and one more thing. That's what we're seeing with the Glazers. So with all of these stories are going through the press that either Sir Jim or Sheikh Jassim has nudged ahead, and you think, okay, this could be the end of it. And then there's a radio silence for another 3 or 4 days. It's because the Glazers say, well, what about this? We give us a little bit more. So that they've eked it out from a Manchester United fan's perspective. You can understand the frustration because clearly there's a toxic relationship between the owners and the fan base. The 917 million pounds of interest on the loan, that's not the loan, it's 970 million pounds of interest. I'm sure fans felt could have been spent on other things. As an away fan, I've been going to OT for donkey's years, and also I've got family in Ireland, so they always either support United, Liverpool, or Arsenal as a rule. So I'd often get tickets for OT, and it has fallen behind. Money should have been invested, and the only money that they're prepared to spend, as far as the stadium is concerned, is on the suits and the prawn sandwich brigade, because they know that they can take them for more money. So it's frustrating. They are business people first, football fans 73rd. It just doesn't come into their mindset. And the fans want this resolved. The manager wants this resolved as well, because there's 2 budgets this summer. There's the budget if the Glazers remain in control, and that still will be a competitive budget. It's not that the club will have no money to spend. And then there's another budget which Jassim and Jim Ratcliffe have both set in their own minds, and we don't know for certain, but I think we're 99% confident that budget is going to be higher. You've only got to look to see what happened at Chelsea in terms of spending the money. Admittedly, it wasn't spent well, and we've all had a good laugh about that, regardless of who you support. But it's going to hinder, and I think the problem's going to be is if United are in the market for a player who's talking to 2 or 3 clubs, the uncertainty over the United position is going to mean that they potentially are going to miss out on opportunities this summer.
Yeah, we definitely want to touch on that, and we're going to talk about transfers very, very shortly. There was just a quick question I had in terms of some of the specific things that are coming out over the past couple of weeks. There was back and forth with a few things between kind of journalists online about the company that Sheikh Jassim registered in regards to the timing of it, and also the rumours of exclusivity reports by Reuters, I think it was. But then there was other credible journalists saying, well, this isn't the case. Can you provide any kind of clarity on that situation from your perspective?
Yeah, setting up a company, you and I can do that in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it will cost us, 100 quid to get a set up company. It will cost us a couple of quid to register that company. So I don't even know whether it's the genuine Sheikh Jassim, because you don't really have to go and present to Companies House a lot of accurate data. If I'm being cynical, and in fact, I wish now I'd thought of this myself.
Yeah,
I should have set up that company myself. Bought a load of Manchester United shares at $17 a piece, and they say, "Oh, look, this has been set up," and we've seen that share, and you would have made a fortune. So for all we know, somebody's playing the game. So I genuinely don't know the accuracy of the data that's been supplied. There's no control as far as Companies House are concerned. They are just a body that does the photocopying and sticks the stuff up on a website. In terms of preferred bidder status and the Reuters article, I mean, I thought, bloody hell, yeah, it's Reuters. Reuters are one of those organisations, a bit like the Financial Times. They stand or fall on reputation, so they don't normally get it wrong.
They doubled down, didn't they? Like they retweeted the article 3 times and doubled down on it. So
yeah. And when you read it more and more, it's not being quite as definitive as I think initially people thought. Again, you've got contacts in football. I've got contacts in football. I had heard from one of my sources about Sheikh Jassim putting in that 5th and final offer, and there was going to be no going back regardless. And I don't know whether Reuters took that and the fact that it hadn't been formally rejected as a sign, or whether somebody or a couple of people have just wound them up. And normally what a journalist will do is they'll look for 2 sources, 2 credible sources. They might have managed to get semi-credible sources. Everybody's desperate to be first with the news. Everybody wants to be ITK. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all want to, we all like the idea of breaking a story. Nothing wrong with that at all. But I think they did jump the gun. I've been on the BBC How to Buy a Football Club podcast with, they've got their economics editor Faisal Islam, they've got Sally Nugent, they've got Sai Stoney. They're all Reds, and I'd spoken to them, and I got some feedback from journalists in TV and radio. We've spoken to United. They say it's BS. So there's a lot of back and forth. At the end of the day, I'm just a teacher. And I don't talk to football clubs very often, mainly because they hate me, because they think I'm a stirrer. And I'm not. I'm just putting stuff out there which I think might be of use to fans, and trying to explain it in a non-partisan way. But I think it was somebody putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5, and Reuters decided to run with it. And then they sort of backed themselves into a corner. As you said, they doubled down. And I think they come out of it with a bit of egg on face.
Interesting.
Thank you for the super chat, Dan Raj, by the way. There was no message attached, but I appreciate the support, mate. Should we move on to transfers, Nick?
Well, it's all going to affect that, innit? I suppose, moving forward. So, let's do it.
The summer transfers now officially open. I think it opened on Wednesday. Teams are already making moves, including your own beloved Brighton. They're already getting players in the door. Liverpool up the road are getting players in the door, which annoys me, but we are where we are. I just wanted to talk about FFP. In particular, Man United have to sell players this summer. I know you spoke earlier, there'd be 2 different budgets depending on the ownership, but we have to sell players from what I've read. The longest I remember United, we've never been able to sell players for a profit or value. It's always been at a loss or at the tail end of their careers. The only one I can remember recently is Dan James, I think, has been sold for profit. He's the only one I remember. Why are United so bad at selling players, and why are we so bad at selling for profit and being able to sort of turn players over the way like Brighton do, for example, or Brentford? Like other teams are able to do it quite readily, and United just aren't. Like, do you any sort of reasoning behind it?
Well, I mean, I think that's as much a football question as it is a football finance question. But looking at it from a finance point of view, let's flip it round. I don't think they've got a problem selling players. I think they've got a problem buying players. If you're not buying the right players, and Manchester United is seen as a destination club. So, I'm a Brighton fan. I know that Caicedo's going to go this summer. McAllister's gone. We've had a couple of years out of them. Fantastic players. But if they're good, they ain't going to stay at Brighton Hove Albion. The trouble is, what happens is if Manchester United sign a player for a big fee, which isn't necessarily the issue, it's big wages. And then where does that player then move on to? Because I will never slag a player off. If I'd go and take a 30 grand a week pay cut or sit on my ass playing on the PlayStation, I'll take the PlayStation option. And nobody forced the club to pay that level of wages to begin with. So I think the problem has been, and you're Reds through and through. If you go back over the last 10 years, how many players can you say that Manchester United have signed who say actually absolutely fantastic? I would say I'd say as an observer, Fernandes, yes.
Bruno, that's it, isn't it, really?
Ibrahimovic, probably I'd put in there. He was a successful signing. We can argue Ronaldo for one season, but then apart from that, I think it's probably 2-3 that you could look at. Obviously, Ten Hag's summer is, he's been quite successful, but before that, 10 years before that, there's not many out of probably hundreds that we've signed. So
and that's the problem. If those players don't go on to, they join Manchester United at that level, and unless they improve, and if they do improve, you're going to want to keep them. But not many have improved. If they've deteriorated, then you're going to have to go and sell effectively at a loss, and that's what we've seen. And I know you don't want to say anything nice about City, but what City have been good at doing is getting academy players and shifting them on. I think Southampton paid the thick end of 40 million for 4 City academy players last summer. And also shifting some other players when they decided that they probably weren't going to get any better. And I think what Sir Alex was always good at was identifying that point in a player's career whereby still playing well, I think he's now peaked. I think he's going to deteriorate. We're going to get him out of Manchester United and get a decent fee for him. And that's not been the case. I think Ed Woodward has to take some responsibility for that because he's the chief executive for that period of time. From people I speak to at the club, I think there has been a big improvement under Richard Arnold, and therefore we can expect to see more of the decisions being made by people with a football background, with a data science background, rather than how many Instagram followers has he got?
Shirt sales.
And it being driven by commercial as opposed to be driven by football. And I think United at times, because they have been very successful commercially under the Glazers, and I'm trying to be as objective as I can. I think United initially under the Glazers did accelerate. They became a commercial business, and there's things that you don't like, and there's things that I don't like as a football fan. Because I used to buy Red Issue every single edition. I thought it was an absolutely Mancunian fantasy because it just ripped. It said it as it should be said. And those guys, they eventually got fed up, but they saw what was coming, and initially they did a good financial job, but they didn't bring the football club along with it.
Absolutely. And one of the issues with that, I think you mentioned people like Ed Woodward and things like that, is the wages and the big contracts that they give out, these kind of lucrative ones to players who are still at the club to this day. And that was one thing I wanted to touch on. There was rumours of kind of Eric Ten Hag wanting to install his wage cap at Manchester United, but with the way the Premier League is going at the minute, it's looking like more and more clubs are going to be state-owned. Is that even possible, introducing a wage cap in modern day football right now? Especially when you look at like Manchester United, I think are about to offer a contract to Rashford that's reportedly 375k a week. It's like, how do you even do that?
I can't understand why a coach would want to get involved in things like that. So I've read the same stories as you. But the coach is there to enhance the players. He'll leave the contract issues to Richard Arnold. So I suspect it's a bit of a leaked press discussion. United are conscious that other clubs will try to take their trousers down when it comes to negotiations, and they're also conscious that agents will try to do it because it is Manchester United, and therefore by putting out stories like this, it's a way of saying, well, hold on, in 2022 Manchester United had the highest wage bill in the Premier League. Well, that's ridiculous. They didn't have a good season, didn't win any trophies. There's no bonuses coming through. They still 384 million. Yeah, we know that Ronaldo was on a very good deal. Yes, we know that Sancho came in on big money and so on, and some other players had enhanced contracts. But looking at it, that you didn't get value for money. I think the wage bill will be down this year quite substantially. Because Ronaldo has gone, a couple of players left last summer. You're not having to go and play Champions League bonuses, which are quite sizable, and so on.
Yeah, there's a couple of players who've been released already: Phil Jones, Axel Twantebe, etc. And I think you're going to see a lot of outcomes this summer. Nick touched on it there, the state of football, and the pun is slightly intended there. We've seen more and more clubs become essentially state-owned. I know in public they're saying they're not, but essentially Newcastle, Man City, PSG. And Man United look like, if Sheikh Jassim is successful, they look like they're heading that way, despite the fact that he says he's a wealthy individual, he's a businessman. His dad is he the of Qatar or the Prime Minister? Some connection anyway.
Yeah.
You don't have to look too hard to figure out it's going to be state-owned. Is this where football's headed now, Kieran? Because like the large swathes of money that involve like TV rights, transfer fees, like we've just touched on, is there going to be still room for the likes of like your Brighton, Brentford to be successful, Ajax, for example, to play attractive football and be successful in terms of winning trophies and not spending huge amounts? Or is that just going to disappear and then the Premier League just becomes essentially a state-run billionaire toy box and they compete for the best? My team's better than yours, my team's better than yours. Is that what it ends up becoming?
I think it's already there. We say that my club's successful. We finished sixth. Manchester United finished sixth last season. That would have been a disastrous year. I think the wealth that we are seeing in the sovereign wealth funds from the Middle East is unprecedented. The fact that we've now got players such as Neves prepared to go to Saudi Arabia, a player who's, I think he would have been fantastic for United. He's a cracking midfield player, runs the game really well. The fact, if he's prepared to go, then we're going to see other players. And I'm not going to criticise a player for saying, well, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my financial future ahead of playing in what we would still believe to be an uncompetitive Saudi Arabian league. They'd miss out on the Champions League. But you've only got to look to see what's happened in golf. If Saudi Arabia can effectively from nowhere buy golf in less than 18 months, they can do the same to football. Yeah, you might need an extra zero. Remember, some of those individual golfers were being paid £200-300 million a pop to switch to LIV, and now there's all this talk that the likes of Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy, they're going to get huge payoffs in order to keep everybody a big happy family. Saudi Arabia will have seen, well, we can do that. Why can't we do that as far as domestic football is concerned? And there'll be new competitions. You'll get the Champions League. Pressure put on UEFA, or an offer will be made to UEFA to have the two semi-finals and the final in the same week in Riyadh. And the money will be so big that the clubs will say, we'll take it. And remember, some of the clubs making those decisions have got vested interest there already. So I think football is in for a transformative point of view. We have to be realistic. Your young lads, I'm old enough to remember Derby County, Nottingham Forest, Aston Villa, Everton, Leeds United, Blackburn Rovers, all winning the equivalent of the Premier League, the likes of Ipswich being runners up and going up. Those days have gone. So you've just got to suck it up. And you're going to be fighting over the minor places. That's the way it's going to go. I don't like it. I suspect deep down, United fans aren't going to like it if it is Sheikh Jassim, but then part of the United fans' psychology is, and United fans are pretty militant, as we know. A lot of them will be hacked off, and then a lot of them will say, "Yeah, I'm not happy about it, but we have to be competitive." And if you take a look at Jim Ratcliffe's ownership of other sporting institutions, footballing and non-footballing, he's not done it by spending money once he's got there.
Yeah, and that kind of segues into the next question perfectly. There seems to be a big debate amongst United fans whether we actually need state ownership in order to compete at the very top in Europe amongst Manchester City and Real Madrid, whatever you want to call it. Do you subscribe to that theory, do you think?
I don't necessarily. And again, you're probably not going to like what I say here. Liverpool have managed to be very competitive. They won the Premier League once. They were missed out by 1 point on 2 occasions in the last few years. Liverpool have done it by being smart, and they've had a really good strategic recruitment policy. They've identified when it makes sense to move players on. The sale of Coutinho to Barcelona, masterwork. 130 million, and what's he done ever since?
Mad.
He wouldn't get an out 5-a-side team.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Failed at Villa as well under Gerrard. He's favourite person. Couldn't do it there either.
So I think if you've got the right football people at the club, then you can be competitive. Financial fair play is not great, but it does introduce an element of preventing somebody from just signing the 11 best players in the world. So and Manchester United does have the revenue streams. It does have the kudos of being Manchester United to attract young, hungry, ambitious players to the club. So I still think that they can do it without Jassim's, what we perceive to be, what we believe it will have additional wealth, but it's not easy. But Liverpool have shown that it can be done.
The reason why I ask it, sorry, just a little side bit on it. The reason why I ask is because the debt that's loaded on United currently at the minute and the cash injection that's needed, is that not kind of a different situation to Liverpool in terms of, because if Sir Jim Ratcliffe was to come in, is it going to have the similar effect as when Sheikh Jassim comes in injecting that amount of cash?
I think the debt was an issue in 2005 because Manchester United were paying 14.25% interest on some of those PIK loans. To give Ed Woodward some credit, those loans have been renegotiated. They're paying now 2, 3, 4% interest. So United are probably only paying around about £20 million a year in interest for a business which is bringing in, United should be bringing in 600 a year. It's not actually that much of an issue. So it would be nice. It would be symbolic. It would be really good from the perspective of a Manchester United fan to say the Glazers have gone, and the thing which we, if people just say name one word to associate Manchester United and under the Glazer era, they say debt. So if the debt goes as well, I think that's symbolic from a fan's perspective. Financially, it won't make a huge amount of difference. I think it's much more important that whoever comes in has a plan for Old Trafford, because Old Trafford has generated more money in terms of match day ticket sales than any other club since the Premier League started.
It's like 4 million a day, right? Isn't it? What United make, something like that. Yeah.
But I think they could be overtaken by Spurs.
Oh wow!
And the reason for it, have you been to Spurs' new stadium?
I've not.
Not yet.
I've heard wonderful things. But yeah,
right.
Not been.
Yeah, it is genuinely a work of art. It's I'm a football fan. I follow my team home and away. You go to all the matches. Spurs is the only one I've walked in and gone, Jesus Christ, this is something different. Because I've been to plenty of the new stadiums, and the Emirates is nice and so on. But you go to Spurs and everything is pretty impressive. But also, from my point of view, when I start to look at the detail, everything is geared towards emptying your pockets. And this is where it's a bit like Disneyland. So if you do the walk over the arch, I don't know whether you've been to Walton Towers or you've been to
Yeah.
Chesterton. When you go on some of those rides and you get your picture taken and you get off the ride and the first thing you see is your photo. At Spurs, that's the first thing that you see. So you just paid 25 quid to do a 5-minute walk over the arches. And now if you want your photograph of you going at the top of it next to the cockerel, there's another 10, 15 quid. And I know somebody who's a director of another football club, and he says, I just wanted to do it to take my kids. A day out in London, it was a chance to do a bit of football stuff. It cost me 200 quid, he said.
Wow.
And that's on a non-match day.
Yeah.
So Old Trafford in its present position, as regulars, just as I do, you get there 20 minutes before it starts, and the minute the match is over, you're off.
Yeah.
Well, what Spurs do is that they get people there an hour and a half before it starts. The concourses are big. The service of the drinks is really quick. The prices are actually reasonable, unless you go to an NFL match, because they'll stick the prices up for the NFL. Yeah. Every extra 15 minutes on average that you've got fans staying at the ground, that's another pint, that's another pie. You've had a couple, you've had a win. I know it doesn't apply to Spurs very often.
Yeah, I was say that.
you've had a few Scoobies. So I know what to do. I'll pop in the merchandise shop on the way out, and it's all geared towards relieving you of cash. And again, at United, the tourist fans will go into the mega store, but as regular Reds, you're going, no. A, can't be arsed with it. B, there'll be some United fans saying, I don't want to give money to the Glazers.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm aware that there is that sentiment. And this is when I was on another Manchester United show, I said, well, what are you going to do? Surely if personally, if I was a United fan and the club had not been sold by the start of next season, I'd arrange a boycott of the megastore.
Yeah, and I would agree, but like you said, there's so many tourists. Like every time I go to United, there's so many tourist fans. It's just it's not going to do anything. Like he won't even make a dent. Like every time I go, it's just I see tourists, full United regalia, scarf, shirt, hat, everything, and it's just like we could all boycott it, season ticket holders.
They
still make shit to the cash.
Yeah. They're Glazers aren't going to go poor. Yeah. Whatever happens.
Yeah. Do we have any questions in the chat?
Yeah.
Sam? Just,
A couple of good ones. Will United sign any players prior to the takeover, or is the fact that this takeover is going through, is that what's affecting United's transfer window?
No, I think the two things are independent of one another, because the manager, the likes of Fletcher and so on, they will have already decided their wish list, and they do have a budget to buy players. Right. So I think that will be independent. Could a new owner come in and say, well, those are your first 2 or 3 choices, go for those. By the way, here's an extra 100 million, 150 million. You can find 2 more on top. I think that could be the case. So I don't see it as being a deal breaker as far as Manchester United's recruitment is concerned. It just perhaps creates an amount of uncertainty, because in the cynical world of football, if I was an agent and United were interested in one of my players, I'd be putting off him signing just in case new owners come in, we might be able to get an extra 20, 30 grand a week. So I'd be doing it for that reason. But some players, they just want to get the deal signed. They might be under pressure to move from their existing club, because there's quite a few clubs that are under pressure for FFP to get deals done by the 30th of June, when a lot of clubs have their accounting year end. And when you sell a player, if it's on this side of the 30th of June, all of the profit goes in and counts towards FFP. If you don't sell them to the 1st of July, none of it counts. So we could see, I know Manchester, Mason Mount's been mentioned. We know that Chelsea are under pressure. That could help to accelerate that deal, for example.
For sure. One last question from Shah Sam, who's a Real Reds Ultra. If we, example, got Qatar ownership, is there anything illegal if we did business with PSG, aka at a lower price, below the expected market value? For example, Mbappe for under market value. Is there anything illegal because of the connections between Qatar, QSI, and QIA, that kind of stuff?
Right. If you go to the Premier League handbook, and I'm a sad sack. I know the Premier League handbook inside out. At the back of that, there is something called fair market value section, and that has a specific element which deals with player transfers. So the Premier League tries to assess the value of individual transfers. Now, if Kylian Mbappe comes to Manchester United for 20 million quid, then it's going to trigger it.
Sure. Yeah.
Could it be that his market value is, let's say, 200, and United buy him for 150? Then I can't see a problem with it, because it would still be a record transfer fee for the Premier League. He's ridiculously young. He's talented. He's good looking. He's a marketing man's dream, as well as the fans and the. So I think you can do it to an extent. It's like everything else when you're negotiating the price. Don't take the mickey, and you'll probably get him at a slight discount, but not a huge one.
Sure. Yeah. I just had one personal question. The Saudi ownership at Newcastle faced a lot of criticism from people, not Newcastle fans, but like the football fans and stuff. But it got processed through quite quickly because apparently the government has links for Saudi Arabia, and he didn't want to mess up those trade deals. Could you see something similar with Qatar? Do you think there'll be a lot of fuss kicked up about if United came in for United? But obviously, I imagine our government, Tories, and they love their money, probably are wanting to continue links with that sort of country who've got that kind of wealth. Do you think that's going to be enough case they'll just get the paperwork pushed through quite quickly?
The government values Qatar as a trading partner. The government is aware that there is a huge amount of Qatari investment in the City of London. There are other potential projects which could be signed off. Politics is about shaking the hands of people you don't necessarily agree with. Yeah. So there certainly appears to be pressure as far as the Newcastle deal was concerned. Now, whether that was appropriate or not, but as soon as that pressure appeared, the Premier League, which had been holding on, decided it was going to reverse its position. The deal went through in about 48 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah. So wait and see.
Yeah, wait and see. Cliffhanger. That's what we'll leave it on. Thank you so much for coming on, Kieran. I feel like I've learned about a million things, and it's just gone absolutely rapid. But we appreciate you coming on. Happy to have you on whenever we can, because like I said, I learned a million things. And where can people find you on socials and things like that?
Well, I'm Kieran Maguire on Twitter. I do a podcast called The Price of Football with comedian Kevin Davey. Wrote the book of the same name. Thank you very much. It's sort of football finance for non-financial people. We've just finished writing a book called Unfit and Improper about how two white boys from South London can take a club from Sunday League to Premier League. That's coming out in October.
Nice.
Yeah. Don't look out for me. I've got an irritating habit of popping up on the TV and radio just when you least expect it. So yeah, but thanks for the plug all the same.
That's all right. We'll leave a link in the bio if anyone wants to go check that out. And Sam, unless you have any final words.
No, just I'm halfway through the book. I'm struggling because not only am I dyslexic, I'm bad with numbers, but it's a really interesting read. And yeah, like I said, even for me, I'm starting to understand stuff, and I'm not the best.
There's a big section on United.
Yeah, I've not got to that yet. Where am I at? I'm on player transfers. That's where I'm at in a minute. So I'm sure I'll get there.
We'll get there. Let's see what happens with Manchester United. Thank you very much, Kieran. And we'll see you guys, the lovely viewers, in the next one. Take care of yourselves. Peace.
Cheers, Nick.